Saturday and Sunday at 5 p.m.
Good afternoon. Today is the 1st of March 2021. Welcome to the lunchtime news here on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Senator Senanayaka. Before we take a look at the stories for this afternoon in detail, let's take a look at the headlines.
Long queues for fuel across Sri Lanka and diesel shipment further delayed. 3-hour scheduled power cuts today. Half-an-hour unscheduled cuts likely as well. Cabinet green light to import muriate of potash. 50,000 rupees compensation claim for 2021 Maha season. Manusha and Harin off to Geneva to speak on behalf of Ranjan. Russia's military 40-mile tank convoy closes in on Kiev.
Now to those stories in detail. Long queues for fuel are being witnessed across Sri Lanka, while most of the filling stations in the island remain closed as they have run out of fuel stocks. According to reports, there is a high demand for diesel at the moment.
Following the COVID-19 outbreak, Sri Lankan office workers moved towards various transport services as public transport did not function in full capacity. Vans that were used to transport office workers can now be seen waiting in line for fuel at filling stations. In Kurunegala, people were staying in line since 11 p.m. last night with the sole intention of filling up their tanks. The people alleged that they were not provided with fuel despite the filling station possessing stocks of fuel.
සැපත කියලා අපි අහන්න ඕනේ ඒ කට්ටියන්ගෙන් ඔයාලට සැපත කියලා ඇත්තම මේ වේදනාවෙන් මේ කියන්නේ තෙල් ටික නැතුව.
When will Sri Lanka see an end of queues at filling stations? Now, the Sri Lanka Ministry of Energy stated that the ship carrying 38,000 metric tons of diesel that was scheduled to arrive in the country on Monday will be delayed by another 2 days due to a delay in loading the fuel.
Sri Lanka's current stock of 37,500 metric tons of diesel can only be released to the local market today and tomorrow. Of this total amount, approximately 6,000 metric tons of diesel was delivered to the Ceylon Electricity Board and only 30,000 metric tons will be available for the transportation sector. The Energy Ministry told Newsfirst that 3,500 metric tons of petrol that reach Sri Lankan shores in a tanker are being unloaded at the moment.
This morning I visited several areas in the city of Colombo and I witnessed there was long lines of vehicles seen at fuel stations. This is a report we filed this morning. Right now I'm at the filling station in Town Hall where a long queue of vehicles can be seen to pump diesel. Now, when we asked the employees of this filling station, they said that because of the ongoing shortage of diesel, a long queue of vehicles can be seen. And it's not the situation, this situation can be seen in most filling stations in Colombo, and people, drivers, have parked their vehicles nearby the filling station, that they have come with cans as well to pump, to collect diesel for their vehicles. I'm Senator Senanayaka reporting for Newsfirst. can see tense situations have arisen in many filling stations due to the shortage of fuel. Now, moving on, concerns are mounting as to whether Sri Lanka actually ran out of fuel stocks or whether this was a deliberate act. This is what the trade unions had to say. The IOC is the State Oil Corporation of India. As of today, the IOC is able to decide the prices of fuel in Sri Lanka. According to the Act number 27 of 1961, the power is vested with CPETCO in its mandate to decide the prices of fuel of the country. There is a Consumer Affairs Authority in Sri Lanka, but these institutions are all silent. People are inconvenienced when fuel prices are increased like this, breaking the monopoly of the CPETCO in Sri Lanka, breaking certain laws. The IOC has come a long way in taking control of the fuel market of this country. In 2017, they have taken major efforts to amend the acts. People having to stay in long queues, the disruption of the transportation across the country, and so on are just mere parts of this conspiracy.
Polling වලට රැඳී සිටින්න ෂෙඩ් වලට රත් යාදු වෙන්න ඒ වගේම ගමන් අඩාල වෙන්න මෙන්න මේ සියලු දේවල් අර කුමන්ත්‍රයේ ප්‍රතිඵලයක් විදිහට අපි හඳුනා ගන්නවා උක්ති සමිතියක් විදිහට.
Moving on from one crisis to another, a 3-hour island-wide power cut will be experienced across the country between 8:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. today.
The Ceylon Electricity Board said a 3-hour power cut will be imposed between 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. today for all groups. However, 30 minutes of unscheduled power shedding may take place, if necessary only during the night peak to manage excess demand. Therefore, consumers are kindly advised to reduce consumption between 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. to avoid interruption. Sri Lanka's Energy Ministry yesterday said that it can no longer deliver diesel for power plants. The Ministry of Energy says it is no longer possible to deliver diesel for power plants as many sectors, including telecommunication, tourism and hospitality, are facing serious issues without diesel supplies. According to the ministry, 30,000 metric tons of furnace oil for power plants will reach Sri Lankan shores on the 8th of March. However, the CEB says furnace oil delivery instead of diesel alone will not solve the electricity crisis in Sri Lanka. People in rural areas face numerous difficulties due to the power outages. A 5-hour power cut was experienced in Min area.
කසිවිතාවයකට පත් වෙලා ඉන්නේ මේ වෙලාවේ දරුවන්ට පාඩම් කරගන්න විදිහකුත් නැහැ ඉස්කෝලේ වැඩත් අතපසු වෙනවා දුප්පත් අපි අසරණ වෙලා ඉන්නේ ඉතින් අසරණ මිනිස්සුන්ට තමයි ඉතින් මේ හැමදේම වෙලා තියෙන්නේ.
Now, Sri Lanka is currently facing an electricity crisis and many have called on the authorities to immediately rectify the issue. One of the main areas of concerns is illuminating of street lights at night across main roads. The general public have called on authorities to move towards energy efficient and sustainable methods for street lights. Residents in Colombo are proposing for street lights to be illuminated in a zigzag pattern so that the amount of electricity consumed can be reduced. Moving on to a tragic story. The power cuts across the country have not only inconvenienced the lives of the people but also put their lives at risk. Power goes out, electric fences set up to ward off wild elephants go inactive, and this allows wild elephants to encroach into villages. A 54-year-old man died after he was mauled to death by a wild elephant in Madirigiriya when the power was cut. Reports say that this wild elephant is still roaming in the Somawatiya Forest Reserve. In more local news, the tenure of the One Country, One Law Task Force was extended by 3 months via an extraordinary gazette issued by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. This task force is headed by Venerable Galagodatte Gnanasaratero, and the appointment was noted in the report of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights recently.
Via the extraordinary gazette, the President has extended the time period of the task force by 3 months from 28th of February 2022. The President notes that it is necessary to seek the views of the public and the panels of experts covering all the provinces of the island. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa appointed the Presidential Task Force on the 26th of October 2021 and was mandated to accomplish the functions and responsibilities assigned to them by the 28th of February 2022.
As you know, the 49th Human Rights Council sessions are happening these days, and accordingly the Samagi Jana Balawege MPs Manusha Nanayakkara and Harin Fernando left for Geneva, Switzerland this morning. They are to present facts to the United Nations Human Rights Council on behalf of former MP Ranjan Ramanayake, who is currently serving in a prison sentence.
අද රංජන් රාමනායක මැතිතුමාට නිදහස ලබා ගැනීම වෙනුවෙන් අපිට
On behalf of Ranjan Ramanayake, we are resorting to a solution from the international community. No legal system in Sri Lanka determined a proper punishment for contempt of court. Accordingly, courts decide according to the particular situation. There is no institute in Sri Lanka to record an appeal in such a situation. We have requested the President's pardon multiple times, but those efforts have become futile. Right now, there is a public discourse citing that this punishment is not legal but political. We are heading to Geneva to get some sort of relief for this situation.
තිකාවතක් නිර්මාණය වෙලා තිනවා. ඒ නිසා මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් යම්කිසි සහනයක් ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා තමයි හරින් ප්‍රනාන්දු මන්ත්‍රීවරයාත් මමත් ජිනීවා බලා යන්නේ.
Hindu devotees across the world celebrate the Mahasivaratri day today.
According to Hindu legend, Mahasivaratri marks the day on which Lord Shiva proved that he was the strongest god among all other gods. Hindu beliefs speak of a dispute which arose between Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma over who the strongest god was, and it is during this moment that Lord Shiva had intervened and produced a great beam of light which bridged the expanse between the ground and the sky. Lord Shiva had spoken to the two gods and told them that whoever is capable of finding the two corners of the beam of light will be the strongest god. Thereby Lord Vishnu transformed into a swine and began digging in search of one corner of the beam of light, while Lord Brahma transformed into a swan and flew off into the sky in search of the other corner. However, both gods were unable to find the corners and they accepted Lord Shiva as the most powerful god. Hindu devotees the world over celebrate this day in remembrance of Lord Shiva and this historic occasion. Devotees engage in religious observances from tonight till tomorrow morning to celebrate this occasion. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in his message for Mahashivaratri said it is the hope of everyone that the spiritual strength gained at Mahashivaratri by chanting prayers, fasting and meditating to worship Lord Shiva will invoke blessings to overcome the challenges faced by the entire society. He added the spiritual message of Mahashivaratri would further strengthen solidarity among each other. In his Mahashivaratri message, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said, to lead pious and enriched lives, what is important is to absorb the spirituality to each other's lives that is taught by different faiths. The leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, has wished a prosperity leading up to peace, compassion and reconciliation for all Hindus across the world in his message for Mahashivaratri.
In more local news, Sri Lanka's cabinet of ministers have decided to award 50,000 rupees per hectare for all cultivations that were damaged during the 2021 Maha cultivation season. Agriculture Minister Mahinda Alutgamage elaborated.
In
April last year, the government decided to ban the importation of chemical fertilizer. Therefore, for 2021 Maha cultivation season, farmers had to use organic fertilizer when cultivating 800,000 hectares of land. As the agriculture minister, we were able to distribute the required amount of organic fertilizer. We were unable to inform the farmers, leading to the reduction in the number of harvests. Accordingly, yesterday, the cabinet decided to pay a compensation fee to the farmers for the damages caused during the Maha cultivation season. We will pay 50,000 rupees each for 1.1 million farmers who cultivated in 800,000 hectares during the Maha cultivation season. We are purchasing a kilogram of rice for 90, 92 to 95 rupees. We have given rice a good price. We have paid compensation for the farmers. Farmers who engaged in cultivation activities during the Maha season have not been abandoned.
Cabinet of Ministers on Monday also decided to permit the importation of murate potash or potassium chloride fertilizer for the Yalla season. The Government Information Department said that it is expected to cultivate about 600,000 hectares of paddy in 2022 Yalla season, and it has been estimated that about 38,500 metric tons of murate of potash of fertilizer will be required. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by the Minister of Agriculture to import the said amount of fertilizer following the international competitive bidding system and provided to the farmers under the government fertilizer subsidy program. In international news, a massive 40-mile-long convoy of Russian military vehicles is snacking along roadways to reach the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv.
For weeks prior to its invasion of Ukraine, Russia amassed its forces in Belarus. Hundreds of Russian military vehicles, aircraft and helicopters were moved to the former Soviet state in order to participate in what the two allies described as joint exercises. But after the maneuvers ended, the Russian forces did not go home. In fact, additional satellite imagery showed that Russia continued to increase the amount of military vehicles, air power and weaponry in Belarus. From the city of Brest in the country's east to Gomel in the west, Russian forces kept popping up at their bases, in towns and even in fields on satellite images and social media. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says Australia will send missiles as part of a $50 million package of lethal and non-lethal aid to help Ukraine repel Russian forces. Morrison told a news conference on Tuesday that anti-armor missiles are proving extraordinarily effective for Ukrainian forces. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said the G7 nations will urge the international community to unite against Russia. Kishida said the G7 nations, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States and their partners have also agreed to help Ukrainian refugees following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court said yesterday he plans to open an investigation as rapidly as possible into possible war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. The court has already conducted a preliminary probe into crimes linked to the violent suppression of pro-European protests in Kiev in 2013 to 2014 by a pro-Russian Ukrainian administration and allegations of crimes in Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, and eastern Ukraine, where Russia has backed rebels since 2014.
Now, meanwhile, Sri Lanka has decided to extend the validity of visas of Russian and Ukrainian tourists in Sri Lanka. Their visas will be extended for 2 months without any charge. This was according to the Department of Government Information, and the department quoted a decision reached by the Cabinet of Ministers on Monday. There are 11,463 Russian tourists and 3,993 Ukrainian tourists currently living in Sri Lanka. And that brings us to an end of this edition of Lunchtime News here on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I've been Senator Sena Nayak. Take care and stay safe.